G'day guys and welcome to the Wholesome Heathen. I'm Johnny Helwinter and this is the first episode, and tonight we are cooking the mushroom risotto from the Elder Scrolls Official Cookbook, which as you can see is this beautiful gorgeous tome right here. This was actually given to me by Johnny Chamas, aka Sunfall from the extreme metal band Hybrid Nightmares. He's a dear friend of mine and we have cooked out of this at least once a week for the last year, so yeah, excellent present and a dear friend. Thank you very much, Johnny. Cheers. Oh damn, that's nice. Alright, so as a side dish to the risotto, we're also going to prepare the Moonsugar Glazed Carrots, which is another side dish from the Elder Scrolls Cookbook. We tend to cook these two together because they're very complementary in terms of their flavour profiles. The risotto itself, obviously very earthy and very savoury. And the Moonsugar Glazed Carrots is very sweet, and with the cardamom and the spice combinations you get in there, they're just very complementary flavours, and so we tend to always prepare these things together. Yeah, what you're going to need for this, it's very, very simple. We've got mushroom. The recipe calls for 8 ounces, which is a frustrating conversion to have to make to all of our Australian fans, I understand. But we sort of went off recipe a little while ago. And now we just basically use as much as we want because we're kind of big into mushrooms around here. We're kind of hobbits. So yeah, basically it's entirely up to taste how much you use and what sort of mushrooms you use, just whatever floats your boat really. 1 leek, the recipe calls for 1 leek. I have used 2 in the past depending on the size. Sometimes if you get a whopping big bugger, like you can just use, just 1, or if you get these really tiny, like we've got here. Unfortunately, we couldn't get any more. It's pandemic. You get what you get, and you don't complain. But yeah, 1 or 2 leeks depending on what you prefer. Normally 1 carrot per person is the way we sort of figure it. So if you're cooking for more people, just add more carrots. It's not hard. And roughly 2 cloves of garlic. But again, that's up to taste. We use fresh garlic, but out of the jar is also fine. Depends entirely on how you like it. Righto, so we're cutting carrots first. I'm pretty sure you know how to cut carrots, but just in case, preparing them for this dish in particular, the way we like to do it is to just cut off the little ends because they're for our little fairy family members for later on. And then effectively what you want to do is, it depends on how long you want the carrots to be. We tend to do them roughly into thirds. Stand them up like little soldiers, down the middle. And just sort of give yourself little sticks like you would if you're going to dip them into hummus or whatever. Now obviously I washed and sanitised my hands before I did any of this, so don't get grossed out by me grabbing the food with these mitts. Put them aside for later. The leek, basically you just want to be cutting up to where sort of the light green starts. Keep that aside. And then I'm sure many of you are familiar with That's What I Reckon. He's a hero to me and a major inspiration. Basically, I follow his advice when it comes to leeks, which is they are dirty buggers. So what you want to do is just cut it down the middle, take them over to the sink, sort of fan it out, give it a bit of a wash and a whack. And after that, you can get rid of that first little end. Then we just cut them into little half moons. I'm not going to tell you how to cut your garlic. Everyone has their own way of doing it. It's never easy when you start out. This is just how I do it. Lovely. Cheers. Righto, so the first thing we want to do is get these carrots on the boil to soften them up a little bit. So we're just going to chuck them in a little saucepan. Beauty. While we're waiting for them to boil, we can start cooking the leek, the onion, well the garlic at least, and start preparing the base of our risotto. Now again, the recipe calls for measurements, but we've been making this for a while, so we sort of just go by how we feel. So I'll say it's a generous helping of butter or margarine or whatever helps you sleep at night. We are vegan-ish, so we tend to use the olive oil spread, so that's what we're going to use tonight. Before I go and ruin it, just want to say, how cute is this bloody spoon roast that Jess made? It's unbelievable. Right, turn that down a little bit. Once your butter's nice and melted, chuck in your leek and your chopped garlic. Make sure it's all nice and separated. And basically we're just cooking that off until the leek gets a little bit soft. There's the aroma coming off that already. Oh, beautiful. If you don't have a glass of wine with you, now's the perfect time to pour yourself one. Very nearly forgot. You can bung in a bit of salt with the old carrots while they're boiling. Brings out the sweetness later on. Alright. It's starting to look pretty good. So we're going to throw in the mushroom. Hopefully not throw it all on the floor. Oh yeah, that's a lot of mushroom. Good stuff. Good stuff. And something that's pretty important when it comes to cooking off the mushrooms and the leeks is that everything gets a pretty decent coating of butter. So then bung in another tablespoon, let that sort of melt through. We want those mushrooms to really soften up, get coated in the butter, start releasing their flavour. Right, that's starting to boil. It means it's time to take it off the heat. As a rule, I just bung them in a colander, to be honest. Nothing fancy about it. Just leave them to cool down. We'll come back to them later. Right, next thing you want to prepare is a little bit of chicken stock. Doesn't really matter if you use cubes or if you've got a broth that you've prepared yourself. We just use the powder because it's easier. heap teaspoon they say. I get pretty serious about that. Righto. Right, so basically, now that your mushrooms have started to sort of soften up and release that beautiful mushroomy essence, what you want to do is just start, well, you just, for the time being, just add a splash. Again, we're not using any sort of measuring system here, which I know might be frustrating, but I think cooking for the most part is about feel. Just adding a splash of that stock to start with. And we'll cover that. Let it sit for about 5 minutes. And really let the flavours soak up before we start adding the rice. Alrighty. That's bubbling along beautifully. God, smell those mushrooms. Oh yeah. Alright, so now it's time to add in the rice. Again, the recipe calls for arborio rice, but we don't muck around with it. We're just using regular long grain because we're lazy. We just chuck in two cups of that. And then stirring in the rest of that chicken stock. Making sure the liquid's getting absorbed as we go. Now, we'll end up looking a little bit like a soup, but that's alright. The rice will take care of it. Righto. We'll check back on that in 15 minutes. Righto, so that's bubbling along quite nicely now. You can see the rice has started to absorb more of the stock. Only about this point, we add in a teaspoon of this imperial seasoning, which is something else that you can find in the Elder Scrolls Cookbook. And it's effectively just a blend of savoury herbs and spices, some of which we have equivalents for in Australia. It's an American cookbook, so they have other strange names for things that we have, or we just need to find an equivalent. It's pretty easy to do, but yeah, you make yourself up a little jar of it, and it'll last you forever. I mean, this has lasted us the last year, so there you go. And we cook with it basically every week. So in that goes. Pairs especially well with mushrooms. Sprinkle that on there. Give that a bit of a stir through. Make sure it all gets soaked up in there. And the other thing you want to add at this point is your Parmesan cheese. Now, like I said before, vegan-ish. If we can get vegan Parmesan, we'll buy it and we'll use it. The problem is, we make this so often, we go through it very, very quickly, and the nearest place to get it is now further away than we're allowed to go with current restrictions. So for the time being, we're stuck using this Kraft grated Parmesan cheese, which I know is a bit of a sin, but it's the best we could do with what we had. So here we go. Again, we're not really using measurements, it's just a taste, and yeah, we just sort of bung a bit of that. Get a bit crazy with it. Just stir that through. while that's cooking off, we'll start working on the carrot side dish. So the first thing you want to do is basically finish off your tub of butter or olive oil spread, whatever you're using. Call for 1 tablespoon of unsalted butter. We tend to get a little bit more liberal than that simply because, for one thing, we're not using real butter, and for two, we like the sauce. Done with this. Not done with that. Right. You want this? You don't want this at a full heat. So even though you want the butter to melt, you don't want it to go too crazy too quickly, effectively, because you'll miss your chance at the next step. So once that's sort of more liquidy consistency, we've got 1/4 cup packed to the brim with brown sugar. You just bung that straight in there like that, and you start mixing it. Last thing you're going to need for this sauce is it recommends 1/2 teaspoon of ground cardamom. You know how we feel about measurements. Sprinkle that on there. So an exciting flavour cardamom. I hadn't really tussled with it too much until we started cooking these carrots. And I'm quite into it. Make sure that's all mixed in there nicely like that. And if you remember your carrots from earlier, in they go. And you just want to make sure they get a good coating of the sauce. Again, keeping the heat pretty low. You don't really need to cook this off at all. It's just a matter of keeping it warm until it's ready to serve. If you're cooking for more people, it can even be more convenient to prepare the carrots in advance. Sauce and all, and then just heat it up as the risotto is cooked, rather than trying to cook the two at the same time. Timing wise, it can be a bit finicky, especially when you're trying to get the risotto right. You don't want this to burn, but since it's just the two of us, we've got it pretty figured out. Yep. Rice is perfect. Off we go. There you go, that's it. It's a mushroom risotto with sugar glazed carrots on the side. Personal favourite. Enjoy. Here's the end of the carrot that we cut off. And now we've got a couple of little critics to come and judge whether or not it's not even interested. Not even interested. How about you, young sir? Is that something that interests you? Good boy. What's he got? Has he got something that you want? Good girl. That's lovely stuff. Lovely stuff.